everyone, welcome to Casual MMA.
This week we are breaking down UFC 277, which is set to take place on Saturday, July 30th. UFC 277 is going to feature 13 fights in total, with 5 on our main card as always. The main card is going to be capped off with 2 title fights. We have the Women's Bantamweight Championship between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes, as well as a interim title fight for the men's flyweight division between Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara France. So as we look forward to UFC 277, which fights are you looking forward to the most?
So for me, of course, it's gonna be the 2 title fights. As a casual fan or even for hardcore fan, pretty sure they have heard or watched these fights from these fighters before. Especially the first one would be Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes, since the last fight was I'm not sure how to say it or explain it, but if you guys have watched it, I don't know, to me, I feel like Amanda maybe gave up too fast. I don't know, but we'll see if she gonna get her title back on this fight. And then the next fight would be my favorite, Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. And if you guys watched our episode 0 of Getting to Know Us, you know that he's my favorite fighter. But for Kai Kara, he used to train in Thailand too. And after that, he went to New Zealand to train in city kickboxing. And that's a pretty famous gym too. I think that's like a bunch of famous fighters who train there, right?
Yep,
some of them.
And they actually have, maybe not so well known, but another fighter on this card kicking off the early prelims, Blood Diamond.
Oh wow, okay. I have heard his name and I have seen his fights before. He's pretty good, so wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, he did have a rough start to the UFC. He's a kickboxer by trade, so he got taken down and submitted.
Okay. So anyways, who are you looking forward to watching on this card?
Yeah, obviously, like you said, I think everybody's excited for the 2 title fights. But I'm actually going to say that 2 of the fights I'm looking forward to is we have 2 fighters making their UFC debut. They're coming in on short notice to replace some fighters who unfortunately couldn't make it. So we have Adam Fujit, who is going to be fighting Michael Morells in our early prelim final fight, as well as Hamdi Abdel Wahab, who is an Egyptian fighter, also making his debut at heavyweight. This week we will be breaking down all 13 fights coming up on UFC 277, but for this episode we're going to focus on just the early prelims. Check out the description for links to our prelim episode, as well as our main card episode when it comes out on Friday.
And you want to tell me about the first fight of the night between Orion Cosi and Blood Diamond?
Of course. So Orion Cosi is 7-1. He technically has 1 fight in the UFC, although his prior fight to that was on the Dana White Contender Series. And Blood Diamond also only has 1 fight in the UFC. His record is 3-1. As we come into the fight, Orion Cosi is the favorite at -175, according to ESPN. And Blood Diamond is a +150 underdog. Orion Cosi is also the much younger fighter at 28, where Blood Diamond is 34. But Blood Diamond, on top of being an excellent kickboxer, which is his background, has a 5-inch reach advantage over Orion Cosi.
That's cool. I would like to know more about Orion Cosi though, since it seems like this is the first time that I will be watching his fight.
Yeah, so Orion Cosi, like I said, this is his second fight in the UFC. He did lose his first fight in the UFC to Philip Rowe. It was actually a really exciting fight. He did get knocked out in the second round, but there was a really interesting exchange where, Orion was hurt. He actually was able to hurt Rowe as well, and they were just kind of throwing bombs at each other. Unfortunately for Orion, it didn't work out for him, as he did end up getting knocked out. But still, the heart he showed in that exchange was pretty impressive. Other than that, the only time UFC fans would have ever seen Orion is in Dana White's Contender Series. It was actually a really cool episode. Him and his brother were both on the Contender Series on the same night. They both got the contract. He won that fight. It was pretty impressive, back and forth battle, but it did seem like he had the upper hand, and then he actually ended the fight in round 3 with he got on top of his opponent and got him into a crucifix position and just elbowed their head until the ref had to step in for his TKO win to get into the UFC. For that fight too, I don't know if he would have gotten in the UFC without the finish. It was a close fight, and really that show, as anyone who watched this week's episode of Dana White's Contender Series knows, is all about impressing Dana, so you need to do your best. Before that, he was in Bear River Fight Club, so that's a minor promotion. He is 4-1 in his last fights, so his 3 fights before getting to the UFC were all wins, and there was 2 TKOs and 1 submission among those. So pretty good finish rate. He's actually finished all 7 of his wins, and his one loss, obviously, like I said, was a war. So really interesting fighter, a lot of potential, still young, and exciting to watch.
Yeah, I remember in the videos when they had the UFC contract, right, with his brother. I mean, besides the fights, I think they also like mentioned that they had pretty interesting background stories. So I guess if anyone have not watched that yet, maybe you can just take a look and get to know more about not only him but his brother too. Moving on to his opponent, Blood Diamond. I saw him fight once and it didn't go well.
Yeah, so Blood Diamond, just like Orion Cosi, only has 1 fight in the UFC. It was a loss. I mentioned Orion Cosi's fight was competitive. It was back and forth. Blood Diamond's fight, not so much. He's a really, his background is in kickboxing. That's what he's known for. That's what he's good at. And Jeremiah Wells just kind of showed the blueprint there and said, if you have any sort of takedown game, just take this guy down until he proves that he can stop it. We've seen this before, and so really it's on Blood Diamond to make those adjustments and be able to prevent the takedown and prevent the submission. So, besides that, he only has 3 pro fights besides that loss to Jeremiah Wells for 4 fights total. Like I said, his record's 3-1, so he did win all 3 other fights. He does have 2 finishes, 1 TKO and 1 submission. So, there is a little bit of ground game there, but also it was in a minor promotion, and you don't really know the quality of the opponent there.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what do you think what Cosi need to do in order to maybe win over Blood Diamond?
Yeah, so I think that Orion Cosi is a favorite here for a reason. Like I said, in Blood Diamond's first fight, he was taken down, controlled, and submitted all within the first round. Orion Cosi has shown that he's a well-rounded fighter. He likes to mix in takedowns in all of his fights. He can pass positions. Like I said, he won his Dana White Contender Series by a crucifix TKO. So if you take all that together, I feel like the blueprint's there. It's a pretty clear path to victory for Orion Cosi. If he can get those takedowns and do damage from on top, or even get the submission, I think he can have an easy night. But if he does, for some reason, decide to stand and let Blood Diamond work with his kickboxing, I think we might see an upset here, and he's in for a rough night.
Well, alright, so based on the stat here, I guess, in my opinion, I think maybe Cosi would be the winner here. What do you think?
Yeah, if I had to go with a prediction, I definitely would say I think Cosi's going to pull it out. Until Blood Diamond can prove that he has the ability to stop takedowns and, or get back to his feet, one or the other, I don't I wouldn't feel safe picking Blood Diamond in this fight.
All right, next fight. Who do we have here?
So for our second fight of the night, we have Nikolai and Nigerimanu, who is 12-1, and he is fighting Ihor Poteria, who is 19-2. In this fight, Poteria is the favorite, and it's going to be an interesting fight. It's actually Poteria's UFC debut. He did fight on the UFC Contender Series, so it really does depend if you consider that a UFC fight. But officially, this is his UFC debut. Both of the fighters are pretty young. Poteria is 26. He does have a slight height advantage, but he actually gives up the reach advantage by 3 inches. He is fighting Nikolai, who is 27, so only 1 year older, both young guys. And interestingly, Nikolai is a orthodox fighter, where Poteria will be coming out of the southpaw stance. So that's always an interesting battle to see who can win the foot battle in that exchange.
Also, we'll see if the reach advantage will really be an advantage or not. Alright, so tell me more about both fighters.
Yeah, so starting off with Nikolai and Nigerimanu, as I said, he's 12-1, 4-1 in his last 5, with 1 knockout and 1 submission win. The thing about it is, if you look at the dates of his fights, he had a large gap between March of 2019 and June of 2021. So if you look at the last, 13 months, he's 3-0, with that large gap preceding that. In those 3 wins, he did get a knockout win over Ike Villanueva. And then his most recent fight was a win against Kennedy and Nzecheku. So, honestly, watching his fights, he does like to mix in grappling, and he gets a lot of control time, but recently he hasn't been able to do a lot of damage with it. He had a split decision win over Alex Kammer, and honestly, in a lot of his fights, he gets rocked. He doesn't, he puts his hands down, and he really is open to a lot of big punches. I actually thought he lost his fight against Kennedy. He did have some good control in the first round, but there wasn't a lot going on. And honestly, the only reason he got the split decision win is because his opponent got a point taken from him in the 3rd round for an eye poke. He got rocked in the fight. Like I said, he definitely has struggled at times with his striking defense. On the other side of the fight, we have Ihor Poteria. He's 5-0 in his last 5 fights, but this is his UFC debut. He was on the Dana White Contender Series in September. And the big question mark for him is, yes, he's 19-2, but really his opponent's record is not great. He is on a 17-fight win streak going all the way back to 2017. But in that streak, only 5 of his opponents have a winning record. And if you take out one of the guys who was 17-18, obviously that's a losing record. But his opponents for that entire 15 fights leading up to the Contender Series was 35-48. So really big question mark on the quality of opponents there. Obviously his fight on the Dana White Contender Series was a good opponent. It was fairly close. It was a fairly close grappling match, but Poteria was actually, he was able to clip him when they were breaking the clinch, and he got the TKO win. Before that, he have a lot of TKOs and even 1 submission in his fights with other promotions. But like I said, you're questioning the opponents there, and also he fought 2 people on the same night, so that raises a lot of questions for me on how that organization is working and what they have going on.
Well, so what do you think? Who's gonna win this fight?
Yeah, so for this one, it's actually really hard to take a guess even. You have Ihor Poteria, who Like I said, great record, 19-2. He's very untested though in terms of his opponents. So at a minus 130, I think that makes sense for him to be a favorite, but not by a lot. Nikolai, like I said, he's been shown to have some, subpar striking defense. And a lot of times when he gets in the clinch, he's not able to land a lot of damage. So even though he's unproven, I think Ihor might be able to get it done here and pull out the victory in his UFC debut.
Okay, all right. So I guess we will have to see who's gonna win this fight. Moving on to the next one, bantamweight. Who do we have here?
So our next fight is a women's bantamweight fight. So this actually was supposed to be a flyweight fight for Dion Kim originally, but her opponent, Maria Agapova, pulled out due to a knee injury. So Jocelyn Edwards is actually coming in on late notice, which is something that she's known to do. And as of right now, while we're filming this, she is the favorite to win the fight. Jocelyn Edwards, that is. Edwards is 11-4, with Dion Kim being 9-5-2. Interestingly, her first 2 pro fights ever were both draws.
Wow.
So, Jocelyn Edwards is kind of one of the young up-and-comers. She's only 2-2 in the UFC, but she has been very active, kind of came in during the COVID era, and she's only 26 years old. Dion Kim has been on a little bit of a skid, but actually a lot of people do like her.
Yeah, I love her footwork. I remember that's like one thing that she's pretty good at when she's in the octagon.
Yep, and she's also going to have a 2-inch reach advantage going into this fight. The one big question mark is going to be weight. Jocelyn Edwards fought at 145 pounds just last month, and Dion Kim normally fights at 125 pounds. They're meeting in the middle at 135, so it'll be interesting to see who gets the advantage in that kind of interesting weight battle.
Also, I guess I'm maybe worried a little more on Edwards, whether she gonna make the weight or not.
Yeah, so originally ESPN had this fight listed as a flyweight fight, and Jocelyn Edwards has said that she wants to go to flyweight at some point, but definitely 1 month after fighting at 145, there's no way she would have been able to drop those 20 pounds in just a month. So I think she'll be fine since she normally fights at 135, but obviously it will be something to watch since kind of both fighters are fighting at a weight class different from their last fight.
All right, coming in with the record of 7-1 with Jocelyn Edwards. What do you have more here?
Yeah, so I kind of already touched on it. Back in June, she was able to come off a losing streak. She had lost 2 in a row, and she was able to beat Ramona Pascual. It was a decision win, and it was actually at featherweight, so 145 pounds. And now she's going back down to bantamweight, which is where the rest of her fights have been in the UFC. She has expressed wanting to go down to 125, but it's not going to happen for this fight. Over her last 5, she's 3-2. She only has 1 KO, and it was actually back in 2020 when she was not part of the UFC yet. Since she's entered the UFC, all 4 of her fights, which she's 2-2 in, have gone to decision. As for Dion Kim, she's actually 1-4 in her last fights, although I'm sure that there's a lot of people listening who think that she beat Priscilla in her previous fight. She vastly outstruck her. She did more damage, and a lot of people were really upset with the decision that she lost back in February.
Oh yeah, I guess I'm maybe one of those people.
Yeah, it also hasn't helped Priscilla that she also gouged the eye of her opponent in her fight after that. So, she is not a popular person among UFC fans. So, like I said, she is only 1-4. Her last win was in 2019, and all of her last 4 losses have all been by decision. So, I think, given that people think she won her last fight, and when you watch her fights, she's actually fairly interesting. Early in her career, she was very aggressive, moved forward a lot, kind of put you on your back foot, and used her striking. She's never attempted a takedown in the UFC, so that's a big kind of giveaway that this is going to be a stand-up battle. But she actually has kind of transitioned. When she does get some more aggressive opponents, she likes to use her movement and use a lot of counter-striking, which, to be fair, actually has kind of been one of the reasons that she's dropped 4 decisions in a row, if you don't include her TKO win, is because while she's effective in her movements and counter-striking, she hasn't had enough volume to convince the judges that she's winning the fights.
So, between Jocelyn Edwards and Dion Kim, who do you think will have a chance on this fight?
Yeah, I think this fight's going to be interesting. Both fighters, really want to win. Jocelyn Edwards is still young, 2-2 in the UFC, trying to keep that streak alive. Dion Kim, 1-4, probably needs to win to keep her career going in the UFC. So there's a lot of motivation there. You also have the weight factor that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I think actually if I was going to bet on this fight, I wouldn't bet on a winner. I would bet that it's going to go to a decision, because both of these fighters go to decision pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
That said, that doesn't mean they're boring fighters. Actually, both of them are really aggressive. Dion Kim just has a really good chin, so she does take a lot of punches, which is another reason why she's lost so many decisions. But, I think because I think the fight's such a toss-up, if I was going to bet on a winner, I think I would bet on Dion Kim since she's the underdog. I'm not sure if she's going to get the win, but I definitely don't feel comfortable. If I was a betting person, I wouldn't feel comfortable betting on Jocelyn Edwards to win the fight at -130.
All right. Next, we have Michael Morells versus Adam Fujit.
Hold on. You didn't give your prediction.
Oh.
I gave the betting perspective. So now, for you, what's your prediction for Jocelyn Edwards versus Dion Kim?
I don't know, to be honest. This fight it is so hard to say with the stat and all the records, information. Well, okay, I guess I would lean toward the Firefist or Dion Kim here, based on her performance. I know, like you said and mentioned earlier, that she lost some of her fights, but well, it just her overall performance, and seems like she never really ran out of energy when she in the octagon. So I give her that.
Yeah, that is true. She is known for her cardio. Unfortunately, like I said, she has never attempted a takedown in the UFC because in Edwards' 2 decision losses, that is how she loses. She gets out-wrestled and she hasn't really been able to keep up with the wrestling of her opponents. So if Dion Kim comes out and wrestles, which I don't see happening, but you never know. It's happened before, like when Francis Ngannou fought Cyril Gane. First time I think most people saw him wrestle was in that fight, and he was the champion. So, if Dion Kim can pull out some wrestling, that could definitely turn the tide in her favor, and we could see kind of a change-up in what we've seen from her in the past.
Okay, and now we have the last fight on the early prelims between Michael Morells versus Adam Fugit.
Yeah, and so Michael Morells is 13-0. He is tied as the heaviest favorite on the card, along with Magomed Ankalaev on the main card. and that's really for a reason. His opponent, Adam Fugit, is making his UFC debut. It's on very short notice. The UFC was trying to find Michael Morales a replacement fighter because he was supposed to fight Ramiz Brahimaj, and he unfortunately was not able to make the fight. So up until just about last weekend, so about a 7-day notice, Michael Morales was still on the card but with no opponent. So he's 13-0. He's a minus 550 favorite. That's huge.
Yeah, and also, 13-0, that's a pretty good record.
Yeah, and once again, this is a big opportunity though for Adam coming in on a week's notice for a UFC debut. If he can somehow pull off this upset, that's going to be a massive statement as he enters the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
But another advantage that Morales might have is he's 10 years younger. 33 is not very old for the UFC. A lot of people consider that to be the prime fighters. But Michael Morales is a young, talented guy. He has a 4-inch reach advantage. And like you said, he's undefeated. So it's going to be a tough road for Adam Fugit.
Mm-hmm. You want to tell me more about Michael Morells?
Yeah.
In the past 5 fights that he had?
Yeah, so Michael Morales, like I said, 23 years old. He only has 2 UFC fights, and one of them was on Dana White's Contender Series last fall. But of his 13 wins, 11 are finishes. He has 10 knockouts and 1 win by submission. He definitely favors his striking, but he does have good wrestling as well. He did get his contract on Dana White's Contender Series by decision. So his opponent was 9-3 on an 8-fight win streak, and his opponent was actually the favorite in the fight. So they didn't expect him to win. It was a pretty back and forth fight, and he probably lost the first round. But once Morales was able to get a takedown in the second round, his opponent was just not able to keep up with him on the ground. He landed a lot of ground and pound and then some big shots on the feet towards the end of the round as well. To be honest, he almost knocked his opponent out there, but he just wasn't quite able to get him out of there. And then in the third round, he was doing well on his feet striking. He did make a mistake that got him taken down. And then he tried a couple submissions and then actually ended up on top. So he definitely showed some good ground game in that fight, as well as some good striking. So it was a really good balanced entry in terms of fighting. Then he came in and made his UFC debut against Trevin Giles. Giles was 14-3 in his fight. He was coming off a loss, but that's a pretty good record as well. He's a very balanced fighter, 6 knockouts, 5 submissions. The submissions were really early in his career, so more of a knockout artist recently. But the odds were pretty even entering the fight. And Michael Morales, credit to him, because he did get clipped really early and got taken down, but he was able to reverse by when he was getting in the middle of an arm triangle. And then later on, Morales was able to hurt Giles with a punch and then just kept going and punching him until he got the TKO victory. All of that happened in the first round, so a lot of action. But once again, really balanced fighter. Even though he only has 2 fights, it's going to be a tough battle for Adam Fugit.
Well, since Adam Fugit is an underdog here, what do you think he needs to do in order to win this fight?
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for Adam Fugit to come out with a win here, I think. He is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He does have 2 knockouts, 2 submissions, so he's also a balanced fighter. He definitely has skills. It's important to note, though, that if you look at his last 5 fights, before February, when he fought last, he hadn't fought since 2019. So on top of coming in and fighting this hot young prospect, he really hasn't been active for one reason or another. until February and is really getting this opportunity just based on the fact that he was willing to accept it and the UFC needed someone to step in. In terms of his opposition in his fights, it has been fairly good. Almost all of them have had winning records, but only 2 of his opponents have had more than 6 professional fights total. So, Michael Morells is going to be the 3rd at 13-0. And I think, to be honest, if you're Adam Fugit, you're going to come in here, you're going to hope you either get a lucky knockout or you catch him in a bad position on the ground. Like I said, he's balanced as well. I think if he tries to game plan against Michael Morells with how balanced Morells is, I don't really think that's going to work out for him. He needs to stick with whatever it is that he's best at and hope that he get. I hate to say it like that, but I feel like he just needs to hope that he gets lucky with whatever he decides to implement.
Well, with the records and everything, are you saying that Michael Morells will be the winner of this fight? For sure?
There's nothing that is ever sure in MMA, but
True.
I really do think that Michael Morells is going to come away probably with a round 1 finish in this fight.
All right, we'll see.
That concludes our breakdown of the 4 fights on the UFC 277 early prelims. Check out the description for a link to our prelim breakdown, and later this week we will also be posting a breakdown of the main card fights.
Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching.